You also did plenty performing with Ring of Honor as well. I'm so interested to hear how that came about and
Yeah.
how that was a thing. I think from 2019 up until about the end.
Yeah, exactly. Up until Final Battle 2021. But the way that happened was, I forget how, but I was in contact with Ian Riccaboni. We were DMing back and forth on Twitter for a little bit. I think I discovered he was a fan of my work, and I had asked him just like, hey, like I have this reel for my managing work. Do you think Delirious Hunter would be interested? And he's like, well, you can just send him. Here's his email, and you can find out. I know he's a fan of your work too. And I'm like, oh my god, that's also incredible to hear that he was a fan. And so I reached out, and they said, well, we don't really have a room for a manager, but I'd love to have you on for doing kind of a segment host kind of thing, like hosting a top five or whatever for our TV. You could do like we could do like backstage interviews for Death Before Dishonor, and so I was like, yeah, let me do that. And so managing was my first choice. Doing backstage broadcasting stuff like that wasn't really something I had thought about doing. But the more I did that with ROH, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do now.
Thought you
Like
were really good
managing.
at it.
Thank you. And managing's fun, but it's like I've found such a fun groove and comfortable niche doing the backstage interviews and like hosting stuff and doing commentary. Like I have a lot more fun with color commentary, but I'm also doing play by play now with PAL Pro Wrestling. But yeah, getting to kind of like learn on the job with that in ROH to me was this like unbelievable experience. I remember Final Battle 2019. That was the weekend we did the show. The pay-per-view was in Baltimore, and then there was a show in Philadelphia 2 nights later for Final Battle Fallout. And in between that, there was an MC, or I think it was Future Stars of Wrestling, Future of Honor. I forget the name of the off branch, but it was in MCW. It was in Joppa,
Yeah,
Maryland.
yeah, yeah.
And I remember like doing something on all 3 nights where it's like on Final Battle, I had a couple segments in the pre-show. And then the next day in Joppa, I did ring announcing. I was pinch hitting because the ring announcer there was couldn't make it. And so I filled at the last minute. And then the next day we were in Philadelphia and I did commentary for one of the Fallout matches. And I was like, man, it's like wrestling. It's kind of like wrestling fantasy camp in a way, where it's like I'm put in this position of all these different jobs. I'm like, do I really belong here? Like, am I just playing a role? But it was so cool, and like being with ROH was such a fun experience, such a rewarding experience. I learned like so much about so many things, like interacting with the wrestlers there. I learned so much about the craft of doing backstage interviews. Like I'd say like Matt Taven, Dalton Castle, Jay Lethal, Maria Kanellis Bennett were all really helpful to me in my like development of that. Zane Decker as the producer for the promos, who now works with AEW. He's a real gem. And I learned so much from those folks. And of course, also from like Ian Riccaboni and Caprice Coleman on commentary. Delirious was very helpful as well. It's like I had a great support system there. And it was definitely one of like the coolest locker room environments I'd ever been in. And I've been involved in wrestling since '06. Been in a lot of locker rooms. And I feel that this was the one where I'm like, this feels the most like a tight knit group of guys and gals. Like everyone's there with like a singular goal and a mission. And yeah, from my experience, it was just an amazing time. And I'm disappointed that it ended. Um, but
I
I'm
was gonna ask
always
how you found out about that because everybody I talked to, it feels like some people were on the Zoom, other people just didn't know until they got word about the Zoom call.
I was on the Zoom when we found out that Final Battle and the TV tapings before that were going to be it.
Hmm.
So I was there. I saw the reactions from my colleagues, and it was devastating. It was very shocking, and yeah, that's how I found out about that. And it was an emotional time. Like the tapings, I want to say, because the tapings came like a couple weeks before Final Battle. Tapings to me felt a lot more emotional, just
Yeah.
seeing the people around because that was a larger base of wrestlers. And I remember that last match that was taped, somebody started playing, I think it was My Way at the end, or it was some very emotional. No, it wasn't Green Day. That's too cliche. I think someone did My Way. It was a very emotional song, and like, God, it was like, why they do that? Just twist the knife. And I think so. That was the end of that, and then Super Card of Honor was going to happen in Texas
Yeah.
for WrestleMania weekend. And then I was told that I was going to be on that show. It was going to be me and Denise Salcedo. We were going to be kind of co-hosts together during that show. And then the next day, the news came that Tony Khan bought ROH. And then,
Wow.
like, eventually, I reached out and I was told I wasn't going to be part of the show, and that's fine. I thought Denise did a great job in her role. But that was kind of the way the ROH time officially ended, was at Final Battle 21. But it's like, it happened, and I get why they did that. And it was just a thing where, okay, this is going to motivate me, that I want to continue doing this. And I would, my goal at some point is to find my place somewhere in that greater wrestling sphere, like doing commentary or doing interviews. Like, that's kind of my goal right now, outside of the channel.
And I had long heard that since the takeover, around the takeover, the communication wasn't exactly great there either. With a lot of people, they didn't know. I had numerous people who were supposed to be booked for Supercard asking me if they were booked for Supercard. And I was like, I don't know, but here's who I think that you should reach out to. Like, it was a very confusing period for a lot of people, but I really liked your work in ROH. I thought that it was really, really good. I think they had a lot of people in ROH that were really shining through. I thought they made the best of their pandemic shows as well once they got them rolling. Like, hearing the Kingdom verbalized during their matches was always really funny. Like, they'd both be out, and you would hear one of them go, "Are you doing okay?" And the other one's like, "No, not at all." Like,
Yeah,
I thought it was great. I thought they made a lot of vast improvements during the pandemic.
those bubble shows, man, they were something else. Like, I didn't start doing the bubble shows until a few tapings in, because it started out very much bare bones skeleton crew, and they would just incrementally add more people as the restrictions loosened and everything. And so I came about like partway through that year, and it was a trip seeing like the empty arena and just like the ring, massive empty house and everything. But like the giant LED boards were cool. Yeah, I think the pandemic was, it was very cool for ROH, because not only did they like not fire anybody, ROH paid me for a gig I didn't even work because of the pandemic. I wasn't even going to
Yeah.
be on. Where it's like, I told them, because I remember it was like right after WrestleMania weekend in Tampa, there was going to be like a show loop for ROH. That was when they were going to re-debut the Pure title. And then the pandemic happened, it was shut down. But I already told them before the pandemic, like, I can't do this show because it's right after WrestleMania weekend, and I will not be able to have that time. So I already knew I wasn't going to be on there, but they paid me for that show anyway. And so I thought, was like, that's very, very nice. Thank you, Ring of Honor, for that. But yeah, no, the bubble shows were great, and their production and the choices they had, like incorporating a lot of like sports like statistics in that Pure tournament, I think was something that really, that whole tournament, I think, really kept ROH, kept it very interesting during that pandemic time when there were no crowds, and like, you only saw what you saw after it aired. You didn't get too many spoilers about that. It was a really interesting time. To not have fans for a while was very bizarre. But then we would kind of slowly bring them back for different shows. But yeah, it was just every part of ROH, like even during those lean times or those weird, uncertain times, like the pandemic, it was still like an amazing learning experience.